all those guys, who didn't play in this spotlight, like this game is national TV, ABC television, but they persevered and proved themselves at the highest level of the sport. And there's been a dearth of black college players making it to the NFL from the 60s and 70s. I did a little series this year where I talked about the history of the draft in the NFL, the time when there were 100 black players drafted. Well, we're in 2021, and there were no black college players drafted last year. So, we're in the midst of a resurgence, a rebirth, so to speak, and we're being led by probably one of the greatest, I don't call him the greatest, one of the greatest NFL defensive backs ever. I would count Mel Blount in that category. So, he certainly is leading the way. And it's a sea change. It's a paradigm shift. So I'm happy to be a part of it. Happy to be covering black college sports for the last 28 years.
The MEAC, it's down to the Big Six, if you will.
That's right.
And there's a need financially for some of the other institutions. When you think about that discussion, what would you say to that conversation?
Well, the MEAC was formed primarily out of the CIAA some 50 years ago. It was very disappointing 50 years ago when they left the CIAA because the CIAA had established a tradition also. People are always going to be looking for bigger and better. So the MEAC currently has 6, you're saying, football playing schools. They think they have a total of 9 or 8 playing basketball. I hope that they will be able to attract, even though as much as I love the CIAA, they might have to attract some of the CIAA schools, maybe Fayetteville State, maybe Bowie State, maybe Virginia State, to maybe come to the footprint that is the MEAC. And that could be a path towards it getting up to the number of schools where they're going to be safe, as well as have a bright future going forward. I'd like to see something like that, but I also want to see the CIAA stay healthy. So from that standpoint, I'm not trying to weaken one conference to strengthen the other. What Coach Prime said back at the first week of the season, he said, why don't the MEAC just go ahead and close up shop, join the SWAC, and let's do this thing like the SEC. Now that's what you call being very, very big-minded. We've been talking about it for years, for as long as I've been covering HBCU sports. Why don't they all get together and those kinds of things? It's a long shot, but it's a dream. Maybe it can happen. Maybe they can resurrect and put all of the HBCUs on the same level as the rest of these big schools and create the kind of generational wealth for these schools and these coaches that the African-American players have done for all of these other programs across the country.
When we think about institutions like Hampton or North Carolina A&T State University, Aggie Pride, if you will,
sure.
And you can even look over at Nashville
sure.
and see Tennessee State University.
Sure.
When we think about some of those marquee institutions, talk a little bit about how much we miss them in terms of being a part of the week in and week out experience in HBCU.
Yeah, we miss them. We miss them very much, and it's a challenge for all of the people that run these institutions, the chancellors, the presidents, the board of trustees, to make decisions about what's in the best interest of their students and the university going forward. I don't blame any of them for making the decisions that they make. Yes, you're going to miss them, but in this process of growth and development, you're going to get some wins, you're going to get some losses along the way. I think the unique thing about Jackson State is they're saying, and they've hired a guy who's saying, we're going to stay right here and do that. We're not going to move anywhere else. We're going to stay in the SWAC. We're going to make the SWAC what it should be. Even from the first game back in the spring, Coach Sanders, the game that you know about where his stuff was stolen, he said, we want to improve everything, including the security, So the beautiful thing is that they have a coach, they have a program, an athletic director, they're in a conference that they say they're going to do it in the HBCU environment. So I think that's very special.
When you see a young gentleman who grew up not too far from here, and he has an opportunity to go anywhere he wants to, write his own ticket, so to speak, and he decides to come home and take the heat of a Coach Prime, a Deion Sanders. How special and symbolic is it when we look at that particular signing of national letter of intent to come to school at the Jackson State University?
Well, this is only a year removed when we were having this discussion about basketball, when the kid from Africa, Makur, was going to Howard University. Howard University has a coach, Kenny Blakeney, similar to Coach Prime. He's had the exquisite Division I experience playing at Duke University, coaching on the Division I level at the Ivy League and other places. You know, so the way Sam Washington, who's the coach at A&T, says it, he says this is just the beginning. We just seen the tip of the iceberg. The Travis Hunter and Makur Maker, and you heard Deion say today that he's not finished. That this was not even the real signing period. The real signing period is coming up in February. You're giving him from now till then to add to Travis Hunter. It's going to be, I think, very special. So I think the trend, you're right. These blue chip athletes are coming home, starting to recognize and understand. I mean, did you hear that answer that James Houston gave about what it meant to come to Jackson State, to be amongst your people and to see this? You don't see the same thing at a Jackson State game that you see at a Florida State game. It's a little different. It's a unique and different experience. So I think that the more kids are exposed to it, these kids, many of them have never been to an HBCU game before. They've never been to a Jackson State. They've never been to a Southern or a Bayou Classic or a Magic City Classic. So exposing them to that and realizing that they can get the same thing that they can get at the rest of these institutions is going to be a game changer.
SIAC. Where do they fit in the equation? You think about a Morehouse, you think about some of the key universities within the Southern footprint, and they can't be forgotten.
No, oh, absolutely not. And I think that, you know that old adage that tide, all boats rise. You know, this is the tide in terms of Jackson State. And I think that any coach and any athletic director worth his salt is going to realize and going to think about how to take advantage of this renewed interest in HBCUs, whether you're in the SIAC, whether you're in the CIAA, or wherever you might be. So it would not be surprising to me to see the same process. These kids that went to the NFL and excelled in the NFL, they went to Morehouse, they went to Albany State, they went to Tuskegee, you know, so there's no reason to say that couldn't happen again.
There's an attractive job opening in the Houston area, Prairie View, A&M University. When you think about that, what's the thought process there, and what do you envision?
Well, you know, I was talking to some people who are actually very involved with the whole Prairie View process. I would say that they're going to take a very good look. You know, the trend now is to have somebody with NFL experience. When you talk about Hugh Jackson, Eddie George, Coach Prime, even Eddie Robinson at Alabama State, a good friend of mine, you know, NFL experience and getting kids to the next level is going to be important. And I'm sure that's going to be part of what Prairie View is going to evaluate in terms of trying to decide who they want to bring in. The rumors and say that, you know, there's some people on the list, Kevin Sumlin, who's had not particularly NFL experience, but certainly major Division I experience. He's on the table. Maybe a guy like Damon Wilson, who's won 3 straight CIAA championships and made his deepest run into the playoff this year. I'm sure he'll get a look. And remember, when Prairie View was in this long losing streak, they went to Bowie State to pluck Henry Frazier. That got Prairie View back in the mix in terms of being one of the premier programs on the football field in the SWAC. So I think they're gonna think very carefully, and I think they'll make a good decision either way, even if they choose to stay inside in terms of somebody that's already on the staff.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sure.